Hello, everyone. It's Michael Jacob with Unleashing Intuition Secrets. Have Jim Scott and James Files with us once again. James is, getting close to the point where there's not much he can share going forward, unfortunately. We've tried to get President Trump to give him a pardon. So we're gonna try and get as much information as we can from James that he wants to reveal, that he can reveal at this point. So, gentlemen, thank you for joining us. And what have you guys been up to?
And thank you for having us. Well, I've been staying either in bed, in my wheelchair, or at the doctor's office, one or the other. The other day, I had an appointment at the hospital. I went in for a CAT scan. And they're monitoring my heart and they're keeping track of it because I got a real bad leaky valve, and they cannot fix it. And normally they would go in through the groin and fix it that way, but they can't because my stomach has moved 3/4 of the way up through the diaphragm into my chest. The esophagus is laying against that, and it's got the passageway blocked, so they've got to open my chest up. And about 12 doctors altogether have agreed that I would not survive the operation. So they sent me home and told me, okay, make the best of it that you can. And so I'm trying to enjoy what I got left.
Good man.
That's what I've been. My wife, she's been doing everything from riding the lawnmower and cutting the grass to cooking and gardening and flowers and you name it. She does it, plus taking care of me, cooking for me, bringing it to my bed, making sure I got plenty of water to drink, everything. So I'm pretty well confined. So what have you been?
Sorry to hear that, but yeah, we appreciate you coming on and sharing.
Well, I'm going to try and last the whole program.
Jim, how about you?
Yeah, but don't.
Go ahead, James. Finish.
No, I just finished.
Go ahead, James.
Asking Jim what he's been up to, because I haven't been talking to people the last couple of weeks over the phone.
As some of your audience knows, I'm a safety director for a helicopter company. I work full time for High Voltage Aviation. We just finished a big job for American Electric Power. We leased a H-60 because our little Blackbird, little birds, the MD-500s, won't lift more than about 1,800 pounds. And we were moving some 8,700 pound towers for AEP. It was an old line, the first transmission line into Southwest Virginia, built in between 1911 and 1914. And we demolished that 14-mile line that ran from the Billsby Dam up through Ivanhoe and out to about Wytheville, and rolled up 84 miles of copper. It was set of 6 circuit or 6 phases of copper, old original copper wire. So we had thousands and thousands of pounds of copper, and we demolished the towers, moved 97 of those towers with the Black Hawk that we leased from Firehawk out in Boise, Idaho. We leased it for Blackhawks are running $30,000 a day right now. So it cost us over $200,000 to lease that helicopter for a week, and we moved 97 towers in 1 week. So that's another project in the bag. We made a lot of money, and very safe, no incidents or anything like that to speak of, and no injuries, especially. That's the most important thing. And moving on to the next project with helicopters right now. So
nice.
Anyway, I've been super busy with my regular job, but it's good to see you, Jim. We do these shows and we don't get to see each other. I've been to their house a few times and actually spent the night there with him a few times, but he lives about 10 hours from me, so I can't visit as often as I want to. But it's really good to be on here again and to see him still kicking. I know he's been in rough shape for a couple of years. After we first met, I found out that he was having trouble breathing, and my father had died of COPD, and I overnighted him on an oxygen machine, and I think that helped him a little bit. But anyway, it's good to see him still kicking.
Yeah. I had it real bad, and I couldn't hardly breathe, and Jim overnighted it to me. And the machine weighs about 35 pounds. She overnighted it. Was it $550 or something for postage, and it saved my life. It kept me going. But I don't smoke, I don't drink, and I stopped drinking and smoking in '69. and I haven't touched it since. And I got my ribs busted on both sides. My chest was caved in. I had an accident in Eastern Europe. I got blown off a cliff by a Hind 24 helicopter, and I was in pretty bad shape. Took me 6 months to get back on my feet again.
That's what you get when you go behind the Iron Curtain to put the hurting on somebody.
Yeah, well, there was KGB was a little ticked off at me over that one. I drove the car up a mountain and down the side of it in the snow and hit a small tree, got out and ran along and got up to the edge of the cliff and nowhere to go. And so I tried to do a duel with a Hand 24 using a carbine rifle and a 9mm pistol. So they came out the winner. I came out the loser. Anyway, that's a long time ago. And as you noticed before, I put my dentures in, all my teeth got knocked out in '69 was a rough year for me. We got overrun on Firebase Brandyville, and I got hit in the mouth with a stock of an SKS and lost all my teeth. I only had a few left, and Shackley came up from Phoenix, in the Operation Phoenix program, to where I was at in the hospital, and he told him to take the last few teeth out. That way there's no identifying marks. I got no tattoos, nothing to identify me. And it was a rough year. had a lot happen in '69.
Jim, when you were working for the agency in Operation Phoenix, was Ted Shackley your controller, or was it still David Atlee Phillips?
Well, I don't know who was my controller at that point. I just got assignments handed down to me from the agency, and I worked outside the military, but I was stationed on a military base with a squad of mercenaries, and we did the things that the American Army was not allowed to do. Because
how big was?
Of us,
go ahead.
Pardon?
How big was the mercenary force that you were with there for, like?
Oh, there was only about 30 of us, a small team, about 30 of us, and I worked 5 or 6 guys at a time. And we went into Laos, we went into Cambodia. We did the things that where American troops wasn't allowed, which meant we wore no dog tags or anything like that, and we had no we left no identification. And we went into Cambodia and we blew up a couple of their ships and put them down the channel so they couldn't get any supplies in or out. They were supplying the North Vietnamese at that time.
Hey, tell them, members of your audience know that I'm a weapons guy, but tell them the story real quick about your 10 gauge. Describe it and then explain how you got it and what you used it for. I think that's
the guy was going home. He had the greener 10 gauge, and he was going home. He was his time was up, and I gave him $100 for it, and it's probably the best $100 ever spent because we'd be in elephant grass and we'd be going through it, and as I'd see the barrel of an SKS come through there, and right away I knew that the NVA was behind the other end of it. So I would fall backwards as I was cutting loose with both barrels, and then I'd go to the AK-47 I carried.
So
and,
describe
close hand-to-hand combat. It was good for that.
Yeah, describe how it was cut down, though. That's what I find really fascinating.
We had the barrel cut down. The stock was cut down to a pistol grip, and it had a pretty good kick to it.
What kind of shot did you have in it?
I used double up.
Yeah. So can you imagine, Michael, a greener 10 gauge side by side, 12-inch barrel sawed off right at the end of the wooden stock, and then the butt stock sawed off so it's a pistol grip, and he had like a D-ring on it, and it hung around his neck. And whenever he bumped into somebody at night or in the elephant grass, he would just raise that thing and give them both barrels of 10-gauge double-aught buckshot. That would start the engagement. I think that's a fascinating thing. I actually have.
You had to be ready for whatever happened. If you stopped to think about it, you was dead. You didn't stop and think when using the fuel. You automatically reacted. That's what we was trained for. It was reaction. And reaction time cuts out the thinking time.
So this is an interesting time frame where we normally think of the CIA as gathering intelligence. But here they're
Yeah.
involved in actual, taking out the enemy, having special teams to take out the enemy.
Yes, and the CIA, they could put a 10,000-man army on the ground in no time and overnight.
Wow.
We used to be called mercenaries, and then they started calling them contractors.
Yep.
Because mercenary became a bad name. And I was working in the Central Hemisphere, which is Central America. And they brought in Oliver North, and they sent me back in 79, I believe, it was 78. They sent me back to Southeast Asia, even though we was out of Vietnam, but China was getting ready to invade Vietnam. And they sent me back over there for intelligence gathering and told me not to start a fight with anybody. And I figured I'm not about to when I'm outnumbered 10 million to 1. So I crawled in the jungle for 90 days and made pictures of it and everything else and forwarded it on to Langley. I would spend 3 days in and 2 days back on the frigate that I was working off of in the South China Sea there. And my 90 days was up. I was ready to come home. They told me, "No, you're on standby there for another 90 days." And I said, "What for?" And they said, "We don't know how the Chinese prisoners are being counted." Because if you remember, China had a fiasco. They lost over 50,000 men in just a week or so. Not because they couldn't fight, but the ammunition was moldy. The weapons were rusty. I mean, they had bad weapons to fight with. And so like I asked them, I said, "Who in the hell cares how they're treated?" They wanted pictures of it, so I crawled around the jungle for another 90 days. I got pictures and sent them back in and got back. But there's a lot of things that I didn't tell Pamela that I didn't put in the book. Excuse me. Because everything I told her she wanted to write down and put it in the book and names and stuff. And I said, no. That was just like with JFK and Dallas down there. I have never testified against anybody. I've never given anybody up. I've been tortured and everything I've said. I've been tortured about 3 times altogether. And the FBI was one of the worst ones that got me wanting to get the ledger from May that belonged to Charles Nicoletti. It had over 60 murders in it in Chicago along these gangland killings. And they left me in a garbage dump, stripped naked. My hands was duct taped behind my back. My legs were still duct taped together. Elderly man and woman come out to the garbage dump to throw their stuff away that morning, and they called the Elmhurst police and told them that they had a body out there in the garbage dump. So they sent a squad out there, and I was still a breath of life left in me. And they took me to the hospital, and finally I wrote a note, and I got them to call my wife at that time, which was the previous wife, not Pamela, and to get my lieutenant for me, Gorilla, and he come there and he carried me out of the hospital. They didn't want me to leave, but he picked me up and he carried me out, and he said, "You people can't protect him here." He said, "But I can protect him where I'm taking him." So I had a couple of gun cars at the end of the streets, and I had one parked in the driveway. Gorilla sat in my house for a week with a Remington Model 870. It said law enforcement only on it. And then the Broadview police came by and they said, "You need any help? We got a couple of cops we can spare. You need them?" I said, "I don't need them, but thank you anyway." And so down went from there. But that's probably one of the worst sessions I had. But from there, but back to Dallas. I went to the Murchison party the night before the assassination. And I went there for one reason, to watch over Sam and him. And I wanted to see a party there, look at somebody, identify them, because they wanted this party to disappear forever. Because he'd been talking to the FBI. And so that's the only reason I was at the Murchison party, but I've seen a lot of the people there. And so long story, but I didn't put none of that in the book because, like I say, I didn't know who was alive, who was dead. I'm figuring right now everybody at the party is dead by now. And the only ones alive that I know of that was at the assassination that day is myself and Tosh Pomley and the other party. I won't use his name. He's still alive. He's in living in Florida right now. But the reason I named Tosh Plumley is because Tosh Plumley testified before Congress 5 or 6 times, so it's well known. He was an airplane pilot. He was a pretty good pilot, too. He wasn't as good as Barry Sills, but he was pretty good. And another thing, too, with Sam Giancana, most of us there in the Chicago mob, but like half a dozen of us was pretty well involved in the assassination of Kennedy. A lot of people believe that Butch Blassie killed Sam Giancana, but he didn't. Johnny Roselli did. And Sam Blassie went missing. Not Sam, but Butch Blassie went missing. And the only thing they found of him, and they pulled the ashes out of the incinerator in the FBI. Ones I'm talking about, they pulled the ashes out. They found the rims of Butch's glasses that he wore. It was the only thing they found in the incinerator was the glasses. But his body, as far as I know, was never found. Ashes were scattered everywhere.
Speaking of that, Jimmy,
his ashes scattered all over Detroit.
Speaking of that, do you want to make a general comment about Jimmy Hoffa's body?
Well, Jimmy Hoffa was killed, and his body went into an incinerator, and I believe the town was, I'm not sure, I could be mistaken, but I believe it was Broadview, Michigan, which is not far from Detroit, which is a suburban area. And the body went in the incinerator there. And the only thing that was taken from Hoffa was his wristwatch, his ring, and his wallet. And that was given to his stepson.
Who was it that made the call for him to be executed, do you think?
The government. Because they were scared of Jimmy Hoffa. They were scared he might run for president. Because Jimmy Hoffa had threatened the government. You probably remember this when they had him up for the hearings. And he told me, he says, you mess with me. He says, you can't mess with me. He said, I'll shut this country down. They didn't believe him. And he called the Teamster strike. And if you remember, when the Teamster strike came on, wherever them trucks were at, they stopped rolling. They went off the side of the road and they parked.
Wow.
And that was it. Jimmy Hoffa wound up going to prison. And on the way to prison, semis were lined up on both sides of the highway, blowing the horns at him. People were on the overpasses with signs waving, good luck, Jimmy. Hey, we'll see you when you get out and everything. Because he was a hero among the working people.
Hey, Jim, tell him
was very powerful.
Tell them the story about when you were at Statesville when they were looking for Jimmy's body, Jimmy Hoffa's body, and you made
they were looking for his body.
Wager.
Yeah, he was. And everybody was they're going to find it this time. They got a good lead on it, and I said, I'll give you guys 100-1 odds. And I said, I got the money to cover it. I said, don't worry about it. So we're going to have cash money right there in Stateville, but we was betting commissary. I had bags of coffee, cases of coffee in my cell, cases of pop stacked all the way up the ceiling in the cell, all kind of nuts and stuff. You name it. I had like probably $1,000 worth of commissary in the cell. And the officers told me, said, you got to spread that stuff out amongst the inmates. He said, get them to hold it for you. He says, you can't have all this in your cell. But my cell was packed full of stuff from the commissary. But they never found his body. And when they dug up the horse farm, they didn't find nobody. Everybody that got in trouble was told to tell them, I know where Jimmy Hoffa's body is. He's trying to make a deal to get out of prison. But Jimmy Hoffa never turned up, and they will never find the body of him. Because it was burned up. It became ashes.
Now, from the
other, I would like to change over, go back to Dallas for a minute.
Okay.
The school book depository there. They got the museum up on the 5th or 6th floor, whatever it is. And they claim that Oswald built this blind there to shoot from on Elm Street with these boxes of books. Well, Oswald didn't build it. And they put that there and built it to make it look good, I guess, because Oswald was hanging out the window they claimed shooting, which wasn't Oswald. And a couple of people, there was government people on the ground, was building the story up to bury Oswald, because they wanted to make Oswald look guilty. And so they claimed they seen Oswald, they seen the rifle, and the guy was hanging out the window. And from where they was at, and Jim has been there in this museum, And from back in the middle of the room where a shooter shoots from cover, you couldn't even see him down Elm Street. You had to be at the one to shoot. So it was all a lie.
Yep.
Yeah, that's museum. That museum to this day, I believe, if you could find the funding for it, I talked to one of the managers there and just asked him some general questions. And they said before COVID, they were making something like $6 million a year or something like that to cover and it's a psyop to cover the salaries of the people that work there. They actually asked, my understanding is they asked Robert Groden once if he would come in and run it, but they said that he had to support the Lee Harvey Oswald, 3 shots from behind. He couldn't talk about a second shooter, and he had to basically, shut up about that stuff. He got offered that job for a pretty high salary. My understanding, that's what I've heard him say, and others at the Lancer convention that was in 23 when James and I were there. And to his credit, Robert declined. And Robert Groden is recently published.
What happened? We pulled up there where Tipper was shot. What did Groden do?
Yeah, he was sitting in the little, kind of like a wheelchair, sort of. And one of the guys that was with us, Eric Hall, pointed to Robert, pointed at Jimmy, and here comes this big $100,000 camera filming the documentary that we're doing about Jim. And he said, James Files is going to get me in trouble. And he got up and went over to his little gray minivan that has the license plate is like Texas School Book Depository, I guess something like this, TS BD or something like that. And he got in his little minivan and sat there until we left. But he was there telling people that, wanted to hear the story about the murder of J.D. Tibbet, the official story, about what was going on. But when he saw James coming, he said, I heard him say, he said, this guy's going to get me in trouble. And he went and sat in his car while we were there, and then he left. And, then we left, and I guess he went back out and got his little seat and was telling people visiting the site, what's going on. And he's, he's the guy that showed the, whatever you want to call it, the Dr. Zapruder film to the public with the Geraldo Rivera show back in the 70s. And Frank Sturgis was actually on that show. And they asked Frank, they said, hey, reportedly you were in Dallas that day. Where were you? And he goes, no, I was home in Miami. He lied. So I wonder to this day, really, what his role is. Seems like, I thought that he really wanted to know the truth about what happened in the JFK case. And I spoke with him at the Lancer concert, that little show they put on every year. But I said, hey, do you know who James Files is? And he said, yeah, well, he's somebody I hope I never see again. And I said, really? Why would that be? And he goes, well, if he's guilty, he should be in prison. And if he's not guilty, he should be ashamed of himself for lying about it. But I've seen a videotape that was done by, I think maybe it was, I don't know if it was William Dankbar, but it was a European person that interviewed him. And I heard Robert Groden say that he believed James Files was the shooter from the Grassy Knoll because the government didn't want to have anything to do with him. They wouldn't even talk to him. And he says, what does that tell you? You know what I mean? And short of killing Jim, here we are waving the flag, asking President Trump to give him a pardon and let him testify before Congress. And they seem to be, acting like, oh gosh, we're going to release all these documents and everything. And I saw Ole Damagard on a video the other night, a podcast. I think it was with you. And he said that he had gone through 80,000 documents, and then they released another 70,000. And he went through those, and 85% of the documents have absolutely nothing to do with JFK or even the time frame. That there were intelligence documents about Bulgarian spies and all kinds of stuff in there, but none of it had anything to do with the JFK assassination. Well, we've got the Operation Zipper document that Robert Trumbull Crowley snuck out of the the CIA and had somebody type, if he didn't do it himself, made a typed copy of the document and released it in the book Regicide, the official story of the JFK assassination back in 2000. And, so you got the deputy director of clandestine operations is releasing the document that says that they determined JFK and RFK were guilty of high treason and that they should be removed. That was their, pseudonym or whatever you want to call it, their code word for killed. I've heard James Jesus Angleton talk about it, and he calls it executive action. But it's a coup involving the murder of the president. And the guy who shot John F. Kennedy from the grassy knoll is on this screen right now, still alive, willing to testify before Congress, and nobody wants to talk to him. Well, why is that? It's because
they've tried several times to take me out, but they haven't succeeded.
Yeah, they've tried like 4 times to kill him since he got out of prison. And Hillary, paid $50,000 to kill him. And he was in the big gunfight there in what city was that in? Was that that wasn't in Round Lake Beach? Was it?
No, that was Fox Lake. Round Lake Beach cops, but it was Fox Lake, Illinois.
There you
12,
go.
where they did the shootout.
Yeah. And these 2 guys are paid $50,000 to kill him. And
That's why I went to prison for 50 years.
Yeah.
And my entire court case is in the back of our book. Excuse me for interrupting you, Jim.
No, that's okay, Jim. This is a good time, actually. If Michael, you can put a picture of the book up. I don't know if you have one, but this is a good time to mention the website because actually, we weren't sure Jim was going to live this long, even to do this interview. Back when we did the first one, he was in pretty rough shape. He wasn't able to keep food down and all that kind of stuff. But if you want to help it, or you want an autographed copy of the first hardcover edition of this book, I really believe it's going to be worth a mint someday if you want it as an investment. But it's a really cool book to own.
Yeah.
But it tells the JFK
Great
story.
Information.
Yeah. And anyway, the website is this is Pam and Jim's website. It's JFK Murder James Files.weebly.com, and you're going to put it up below the thing on Rumble, I guess, or YouTube, whatever you put this on.
Yeah, it'll be on. It's live on. We're live on YouTube right now, and it'll be up on Rumble. We'll probably do. It's in the chat right now, and we'll probably do a audio on it as well.
Yeah.
So not only does James do books, but he's got some art.
Absolutely.
Let me display some of that art. Art is pretty. When I first saw this, I was like, "You got to be kidding me! What talent!"
Yeah, I have one
wow.
of the originals, and the sheen on her hair in the middle of it. That's not the glow of light where it was photographed, and the sheen of the light that goes down her collar and across her left shoulder. That's actually on the print. It looks so real, but that's Jackie, her reaction in that outfit that day. And I guess, Jim, you can tell the story. He had like a vision, and he did this with colored pencils when he was in prison. And they're going to make enlarged color copies of this that are going to be a limited edition. I don't know the number yet, but like 100 or a couple hundred or whatever. And they're going to be autographed by James Files. And he's going to sell these. And I think it's a remarkable piece of artwork. And to think that it was done by the CIA assassin that was assigned to kill her husband, I would think something like this at Sotheby's, I can't. Well, in the size that it's in right there, it's like 8.5 by 11, like a sheet of paper. But one of those already has sold for like over $1,500 on eBay. There was a couple copies that got out, and just a copy of it, like a Xerox copy of it, sold for $1,500 on eBay. And to think to have a piece like that, a piece of artwork that is autographed by the assassin, and he did it in prison, and that's easily to document. Those are going to be, I don't know how they're going to be offered for sale, probably on their website, but I'm going to get one.
Yeah, that'll be amazing, and I guess you guys have other ones you're going to offer as well. Now, going back to the reason why you were chosen for the Operation, I guess, Assassin 40 group was because of, like we talked about earlier, your skill and your involvement in Vietnam, and so they handpicked you. George H.W. Bush handpicked a lot of you guys to be part of this assassin team. He took Operation 40, so he took really good care of you guys. He always told you that I'll send a plane, I'll send whatever I need to come get you if you ever need help. So he really took really good care of you guys, and of course, you guys over the years did some amazing work. Now, I want to throw in a little bit of my background for Navy SEALs and so forth. I remember I was part of a group they did a deep psychological analysis of us, and they told us that if you guys weren't Navy SEALs, you would probably be part of some mafia group somewhere. I was like, and so I mean that goes to perfect, what James is involved with, because I look up to James because I know how incredibly trained he was. I went through that type of training. I was never involved in one of the programs he was, but I know people that were involved in some of these high-speed programs. CIA does amazing MK Ultra mind control stuff on all of us. And James talks about how, when he was growing up, he was part of a program. So it is very, very difficult, to break free from this stuff. And then you get used, you're being used, and you're like, how do you break free from that? I know that a lot of you probably have your opinions of all this, but James was, and people have like criticized me because I call him like he's a hero in my eyes, and from what I did, he would have been a hero in my group. And like I said, I had guys that basically broke free and did programs like James was involved with. So pretty amazing. You get involved in these groups, and you're focused. You do your hits and all that kind of stuff. It is amazing. So you were picked. You were 21 when you were standing behind the fence taking that shot. Mm-hmm. So very young. You were pulled from that group that was in part of the CIA's group in Vietnam, and then they contracted you to do these hits over time. Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, the SEAL teams wasn't a regular hit, but it was a nighttime jump I made. We had a SEAL team that was in North Vietnam. There's the north of the DMZ, and it put in a call for some help. They out of ammo and out of grenades and everything, explosives. So there was no way to get it into them. So I told them, pull the doors off a bird dog and rig my chute and hook me up. Would drop me at 250 feet above ground. And I think I swung 3 times with 80 pounds of ammo on me. And it took me and the SEALs, I think 3 or 4 days to get back down the river because we could only move at nighttime. We stayed in the water and we covered with brush, and we built a small raft like with brush on it and just floated down the river. And fortunately, we got back without any problem. We didn't lose anybody. There was no big gunfights or nothing. But at daytime, we'd pull into the bank, like we was anchored to the bank there, and we'd see the North Vietnamese gunboats go by us and everything else. And we just stayed quiet, and we stayed in where we slept during the day, a couple of us at a time, and a couple of them keep watch. And we finally got back downriver. But it wasn't easy, but we got it done. And do you know Jesse Ventura?
Yeah.
Yeah. Now, Jesse, he was, Navy SEAL also. So I knew Jesse. I met him up in Minnesota right after he was governor. And he come to I was given what do you call it? I can't even think of the name of it right now.
Presentation.
Yeah, presentation. Uh-huh. And he wasn't going to get to it because it was my friend Wade Olson. It was his birthday, and his anniversary was like a day apart. So they were doing them both together. So he called me and asked me to come up there and do the presentation. I said, yeah. So Jesse had said he wasn't going to come, and he found I was going to be there. Jesse showed up, and he said he could only stay about 45 minutes. And it took about 4.5 hours for him to get back to his car. But we had a lot of talks. We had a lot of good times.
Wow, that was an absolutely amazing reveal you just had. You're really, delivering on this show. Wow, I'm amazed. So thank you for your service. Helping those SEALs out.
Thank you for yours also.
You should have got a huge medal, and who knows? God, that's incredible. So
well, I got I've had a few medals, and I got a lot of Purple Hearts and everything. And my ex-wife, she asked me at one time when we still married, she said, "Why don't you put your Purple Hearts out?" And I said, "What? Did everybody know I forgot the duck?" Because we called the Purple Hearts forgot the duck medals.
Yeah, I remember a couple of guys that got Purple Hearts, and they weren't too proud of them either. But I mean, we've had guys that have gone in and rescued less than you did, and got medals of honor. Navy, we got a couple Navy SEALs that rescued one other person. You rescued a whole team, so that was Medal of Honor material right there. Because you're working with the CIA doing that kind of work, they can't have you be identified.
They give us letters of accommodations, and they put them in a file that nobody ever sees, and we get letters of reprimandation when we screwed up, and nobody gets to see them, so it all works out equal. But we didn't do it for medals. We did it because I love this country, and it was what I did. It's what I was trained to do.
What do you think what's the most amazing reveal in your book, other than the fact that you're the guy that shot John F. Kennedy? What in the back of the book or in the story?
There's a lot of documents in the back of the book that support and claim. And I mean, it's all there. The documents can be checked out. They are real. And I wouldn't know what to say. It'd be the most.
The CIA debriefing is a
the CIA debriefing is tape. Was made there 63rd and Lawler in Cicero, Illinois, right outside Chicago, suburban area of Chicago. And that's at the Midway Airport, 63rd and Lawler. We had a little staging area there where we ran things. But the book has got a lot of stuff in it, but I wouldn't say which is more important than the other.
Well, Tim Town, in our question and answer, he asked you, what proof do you have that the CIA was involved? And you told that was probably the most substantial evidence that if it ever shows up.
That is, if they would go to the archives at Langley and get the tape. And it was back in '63. That's when we had the big tape machines, and they had the big reels on them and everything. But that would prove it all right there. They just released a film that would tell everything, the debriefing.
So to back up just a little bit and to clarify to your audience, the after you shot President Kennedy, you drove back to Chicago, and David Atlee Phillips, your CIA controller, who had issued you the Remington XP100 chambered in 221 Remington Fireball, he interviewed you at the CIA aircraft hangar at Midway Airport at 63rd and Lawler, and he taped it on a reel.
Interview was a debriefing.
The debriefing at 63rd and Lawler at the aircraft hangar at the airport.
Right.
And now I looked that up here recently, and it's labeled now as some kind of civilian jet sales company. So that would
still a front for the CIA.
Yeah, I guess it's still a CIA facility. Sorry if we're outing you, CIA, but too bad. And if it's a civilian jet sales operation now, but really, they can provide jet transportation from the central part of the United States to wherever they want to go with these jets that really belong to the CIA, but they act like they're a jet broker, But anyway, you got interviewed. It was taped on reel to reel. Exactly. And that's when the first person other than you and George Calora that you call Wolfman, that's the first time anybody, specifically David Atlee Phillips, knew that you used a custom hand-loaded mercury bullet that Wolfman made for the job.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And then so Kennedy gets hit in the temple with this mercury bullet. He had been hit. He had this, he'd reacted and had his hands up around his throat. his wristwatch, the Cartier wristwatch, was
Oh,
exposed.
and he was in the package when he grabbed his throat.
Yeah. So
When
he's got his
Nicoletti hit him in
hands
the
up,
package.
but the key thing is his sleeve was back enough. His wristwatch was exposed, and when he was hit in the head, the mercury in the bullet that's designed to keep it from ricocheting, it splattered and got on the wristwatch. And then that book by Christopher and Michelle Fulton entitled The Inheritance was published here recently that had the story of that wristwatch. They didn't know what those little silver speckles were on the face of the watch and the band and stuff. Turns out they had it tested and it was mercury. So only right when David Atlee Phillips got debriefed you, he discovered that you'd used the mercury bullet, and then there was mercury on JFK's wristwatch. Now, where would that come from other than this story? Where would speckles of mercury come from on the president's wristwatch when they tested it years later? Where would mercury have come from on that wristwatch? It came from that mercury bullet.
Yeah.
So that, to me, that's the one thing that, in your debriefing, that's that, and the fact that they've got a photograph of you. He showed it just a few minutes ago of the Operation 40 group, where you're in the photograph with the CIA's assassination group, and then you're with Felix down in Bolivia when you captured Che Guevara and executed Che Guevara. So if you take those two photographs and the little known fact about the mercury bullet, and you put those things together, who in the world would have the sense? That photograph, James, is, if you look at this, it says that his name, it's in there, something, it says something like Blanco Loco or something like that. It's a pseudonym, and actually, if you know what that means, it means crazy white guy. But the guy on the left, the guy leaning over with a cigarette in his hand laughing, that's Felix Rodriguez, the famous CIA officer. The guy behind him, the second guy, that's Porter Goss, who became the director of the Central Intelligence under George W. Bush after his daddy told him to put him in the office. So George, that way, how else, when one of your best friends is the director of the CIA, do you have control over keeping you out of trouble? When you were involved in the Kennedy assassination, you put one of your Operation 40 guys in as the DCI. The third guy is the pilot, Barry Seal. And then on the other side, you got Seymour Hersh and Frank. And that actually, I swear that, look, it says labeled as Frank, but it looks like Tosh Plumley to me. But the third guy, the third guy is James Files. So if this is the only known photograph of the CIA's Operation 40 group, who's sitting across the table from him are the three of the most famous CIA guys in history, Felix Rodriguez and Porter Goss and Barry Seal, and sitting right beside him is, let's say, Frank Sturgis. And then you got a picture of him with Che Guevara in October 67. This was in January of 63. They're already starting to, plot the assassination of Kennedy. And you put those three pieces of evidence together, how in the world can anybody say, you got to be smoking crack not to say, I believe this guy is really a CIA assassin? How in the world? That's not a Photoshop picture. But you'll hear every kind of denial you can think of. Oh, that's not really him, it's somebody else, and all that kind of nonsense. But anyway, to me, that's the only proof I need, other than he's alive and he's here to tell the story and wants to, get the truth out there. And to me, if I was President Trump, I would send a medical team with a medical ambulance to transport him to Washington under the tightest security and get him before Congress and the television cameras and have him testify, give him a complete pardon, and let him testify to what was going on in the country back then and help heal this country. Because we know the government, we know the CIA killed John F. Kennedy. We know the deep state is doing all this underhand stuff. We know that the deep state is actually controlling. It's not, I'm not blaming the congressmen and senators who've been paid off and are just doing what they're told to do. And you've got these puppets like Joe Biden as the president. You don't have a puppet as the president right now. You got a guy that doesn't need anybody's money. that ran on his own money, got elected on merit. And, is he perfect? I don't think there's anybody. We're not looking for perfection. What we're looking for is a patriot and somebody that's going to do something by the Constitution. I'm going to tell you something today I noticed. I've been noticing it for a long time, but this is a perfect time to mention it. I want you to watch me right now. I'm sitting here telling this story, and I'm looking right at the little camera on my thing, and I'm telling you the story. I'm not reading notes. Have you ever seen Chuck Schumer testify before Congress? This is what you see. And he's reading off sheets of paper. The staff gives him a briefing, and it's the same thing with Nancy Pelosi and all the rest of them up there. They'll get up there with a pile of paper, and they sit there and just read it, and those are their comments. Well, who wrote that? And who has the power to write a briefing that the Senate minority leader gets up and delivers to the nation about how his opinion about how Trump is ruining America or something like that? All he's doing is reading what he was told to read. Who has the power to control a senator that's been in office at that long to tell him what to say in front of the cameras? That's the enemy of this country. So when you see him on TV showing you the top of his head while he's reading a prepared speech that he's been told to deliver, you are looking at the same puppet that was Joe Biden reading the excuse my French, the absolute bullshit that was on the teleprompters that he couldn't even read. It's like, today I'm going to enforce the Constitution. Pause. Look at the audience. And it's just a puppet who doesn't even know. All he's doing is reading the teleprompter. Schumer's the same way. All these people in the deep state, they come in there and they read a prepared statement. What I want to know is who wrote it. You know what I mean? Who's got the auto pen? Can you imagine staffers having auto pen? No. It was somebody like, and who's controlling Obama? It was like Obama's third term. I'm ranting, I know now, and we're getting off JFK and everything. But I can tell you, our country's going down the tubes if we don't correct this. And this is our only chance, is that we've got Trump in power right now and a majority in the House and the Senate. And simple things like they're passing the Hearing Protection Act, so people can buy suppressors and don't have to go through a Class 3 check. All a suppressor does is make it a little healthier to shoot a gun. It's a little quieter. That's all it is. Make it silent. It's considered rude in England to hunt without a suppressor.
If I was better health, I'd be at work. If I was in better health, brother, I'd be back to work. Believe me.
Well, they need people like you right now. And
the good guys.
Yeah, they need good guys that are. Exactly. But anyway, that's my rave for today. But I can tell you, James is. I wish with a pardon, he could testify to things that it would be 8 hours. It would be like the Watergate briefings. It would be 8 hours a day on C-SPAN. Everybody in America would be watching it, and he would be telling the government, and the people of the United States what the CIA was up to over a 28-year span. And something I remembered about, and I want to change the subject. I want to digress to Vietnam. Jim, if you would be so kind to tell the story about the big bridge in Vietnam where the detonators didn't work. Tell that story. And to me, a book could be written about this mission right here. Go ahead.
Okay, this one bridge where the Air Force had been trying to knock it down, and they just couldn't get it knocked down, and every day they'd repair it. And so me and a small team went in there, and right under the North Vietnamese, they were standing guarding the bridge. We was underneath it. We went up to it, and we wired the bridge, and we made sure it was going to go down the next day, and we wasn't going to blow the bridge until the Air Force hit it. When the Air Force hit it, we'd blow the bridge, and then they'd think that the Air Force done it. It would give us time to get away. We went up there and we got everything all set, and when I pushed the buttons the next day, the bridge didn't go up. The detonators didn't work. So from then on, I used double detonators on everything I put there. Make damn sure that one of them was going to work.
So tell them how you finished the mission.
Oh, we finished it. We got it done. Went back down there and rewired the bridge and put detonators on the explosives and got everything ready for the next day, and went ahead with the things just like we planned to do. And then we had to get out of North Vietnam and cross the DMZ and get back into South Vietnam.
So I can't remember the name of the bridge, but I had an F4 pilot that was one of my instructors back years ago. And he flew missions against that bridge, and they were trying to bomb it. And they didn't have LGBs like they do, today, laser guided stuff. And they were dropping stuff from such high altitudes because of the anti-aircraft missiles and fire and stuff like that. So they would come in and they'd bomb the bridge, and they would bomb all around it. They'd hit in the river and they would hit next to it and all that, but they didn't really drop the big bridge. And the Vietnamese,
well, the Air Force had like that. The flake was so heavy that you would actually get out and walk on it, looked like.
Yeah.
Which we know you can't, but it looked that way. Does on the ground, looking at it. But the Air Force did one hell of a job, and they spent a lot of money trying to take that bridge down. Yeah.
So the next day, when he put the double detonators on it, they were able to blow the bottom of the bridge out, and then it fell. The big concrete part that they wanted to knock out fell into the river and took the bridge out of service. And then they snuck away, and the Vietnamese thought that the bombing had knocked the bridge out, and there was a team there for 2 days. And James led that mission. So to me, that would make a great movie. I mean, that's a Tom Cruise movie right there.
No kidding. Yeah.
But
now with Jimmy, it's interesting because Jimmy, I know some people have said, how is he still alive? Well, they've tried to kill him 3 times. And 1 or 2 of those times they tried to kill him, they got knocked off. So would you want to mess with Jimmy? So that's the power of someone that's trained as well as Jimmy is. If you want to F around, you're going to find out. The best they could do is put him in prison for a couple decades. But here he is. He's free. He's talking. It would be nice to see him free, talking in front of a congressional committee. Hello. But, at least we got him out here on, social media so we can share his great stories.
Yeah. This would be the hottest news if the legacy media would just, clench their teeth and do it and let him. I mean, they could let him tell his story, and then for the next month, you could say, "Oh, that one of the stories is Jim," and you could tell him there's all these stories out there, but they say that he couldn't have been in Dealey Plaza on November 22nd, 1963, because he was in Chicago because his daughter's Kathy was being born. Well, it's true. He was at his Kathy's birth, but she wasn't born in 1963. She was born in 1966, right, Jimmy?
Yep, and I told them to stop the press. All the press stopped it, telling Kennedy wasn't killed until 1966.
Yeah.
Because everybody was saying, like, this one guy claimed they had a tape recorder. They recorded one of my phone messages, and I didn't even have a phone at that time because I wouldn't have a phone in my house because
tradecraft.
Everybody was tapping the phones on organized crime and the whole thing. And when my ex-wife, when her leg got broke, she had to have a phone, so I had a phone put in, but that was after Kennedy.
And it wasn't in your name anyway, was it?
Put it out there in the news. I said, give it to the news. I said, everybody wants to hear it. I said, give the tape recorder my message from Chicago when I was there that day that Kennedy was killed. And he never produced it.
No. And it's all it is just denials. When you control the media and you can put out on there, you could say, oh, he's we figured he's been totally debunked by the FBI. And a lot of people go, oh, well, there you go. He's just making it up.
About what happened to Dick Clark when he was trying to get this out.
Well, Dick Clark, he made a mini series, my history of it, the CIA, the JFK assassination. And when they were supposed to air it, the government told him, if you run this show, if you put it on TV and you run the show, so we're gonna pull your license. You will not be running anything else over the air. So Dick Clark backed off.
They were going to do like Dick what, Clark 10 different shows or something.
Yeah.
And he was told he would lose his FCC license if he aired it. That's what you got.
I don't know what happened to the film anyway, but it disappeared. So Dick Clark never ran it. Dick Clark died. The rest of the story reverted back to me, and we've never done anything with it since.
Yeah.
And we did the filming in Dallas. What was it, 6 or 23?
Yep.
2023.
With 23, we did the filming down there. And I don't know when that's going to come out or not, but Jim can tell you about that and the people that did it and everything. But I probably won't live to see it.
Well, we're hoping that it'll be done soon. It's I'm not going to mention
They're
their
going to
names.
kill me. It's just that my health is bad.
Yeah, he's been working on. He did a big. It's a professional film group that's really busy doing. They did a big release movie back several months ago on COVID, and they're working on one right now that's about 9/11 and about how that was an inside job. And then the next is the JFK assassination. So they're, this guy works like 7 days a week, long hours, and but they're going to try to get a documentary on either the History Channel or one of the other things like that. And but they got over like 30 hours of video of James telling the story.
Wow.
We went to Dealey Plaza in November 2023, and we did a presentation to the media down there, and standing room only, more than 80 people in the conference room at the that Hilton Hotel in Dallas. And I did a PowerPoint that's available if somebody wants it. If they'll contact me, I'll even share it with you. But it was supposed to take about 2 hours, and with all the questions and everything, it took 5 hours, and everybody stayed for the entire time. And Hugh Tomlinson did a feature story in the London Times about it. But the American legacy media was not allowed to cover it. There was a few people that have podcasts like you that covered it. There's one that's out there right now. It's called Blood Money, and it's got several hours of, I think most of the whole thing is on there. It's kind of piecemeal. It's like part of it. The most interesting part that she thought, the news journalist, she put it first and rearranged the order of it. But there's several hours of that interview that are on, I think either Rumble or YouTube, and it's Rumble, I think. It was on YouTube for a while, and they took it off. That probably the CIA told them to take it off. But
yeah,
it's called Blood Money. I killed JFK, something like that, and it's a close-up video off a high-resolution phone thing that one of the audience members did of James answering questions. And also, there's a series of videos out there done by a fellow named David Armstrong. It's a pseudonym. Excuse me, a really good guy. Excuse me, who's a retired police detective. And those videos, James describes a lot of things, including the murder of J.D. Tippit. Actually, right now, James, if you want, I'll digress, and you can talk about what really happened to J.D. Tippit and who killed him and how he was killed. Lee Harvey Oswald did not shoot JFK or J.D. Tippit.
Lee Harvey Oswald never even fired a gun that day because they gave him a paraffin test. And I've got a copy of the police report that the paraffin test is in the back of the book. And it's not been altered or anything. It's the original. And J.D. Tippit was down there with us at the Bay of Pigs in the beginning. I guess he was there gathering information and stuff and doing it and making notes on it and everything else. And for John C. Grady, which was the historian for the 82nd Airborne. And John C. Grady flew to Stateville Prison to see me a few times while I was there. And anyway, who killed J.D. Tippit was Gary Marlowe. And when Gary Marlowe was with us at working in the Bay of Pigs with us down there in the southern part of Florida, him and J.D. Tippit became pretty good friends, and they used to go out and have a couple of beers together and lunch together, like that. So when Tippit seen Marlowe on the sidewalk that day, which we call the Raven, he got out of his squad car. He never pulled his gun or anything because he went over to see a friend, to meet a friend, and shake his hand to see how he had been. And so when he walked up to the Raven pulled his gun and shot Tippett because Raven was not supposed to be in Dallas and he was not supposed to be identified there or anything else. So he killed Tippett, and the people that described the guy that shot Tippett was wavy hair, which was the Raven because he had wavy hair. Lee Harvey also did not have wavy hair. And so, like I say, and Marlowe used the revolvers. He left no brass behind or anything. But that is why Tippett never even had his gun out.
That's a key point too, because after it happened, Gary, the reason he was called the Raven is he had wavy, really ink black hair. It was so black, it was like the wings of a raven. It was shiny,
It almost like blue in the daytime sunlight.
Yeah, like a purple. And they called him a Raven because his hair was so black like that. But Gary carried like a Colt 6-shot revolver. There was brass found at the scene, and if you see a presentation done by Robert Groden, somehow magically they know that it was a Colt semi-automatic 38 Super because the brass is 38 Super brass, right? That brass was planted at the scene. I don't think Gary Marlowe planted it. I think probably either the Dallas police or the cleanup crew, whatever you want to call it, put that brass there. And it was to confuse what really occurred because when Gary brought the revolver to you want to tell that part about how he showed up?
Well, Gary knocked on my door at Mesquite, Texas there. And I opened the door. I looked at it and I shocked. I said, what the hell are you doing here? And he said, I come by here. He said, the boss told me you was here. And when he said the boss, he meant Shackley. And not Shackley, I mean Phillips.
Yeah.
I meant Phillips. And said, I was going to drop the gun up to you. I said, you just told me you burned a cop. I says, and you're going to give me the gun. He says, yeah, you're going to take it back with you. And I said, no, I don't want it with me. He said, throw the son of a away, get rid of it. And I wouldn't even let him in the motel room. And then Gary and me was childhood friends. We grew up together.
So the point is, immediately after killing J.D. Tippett, how much time do you think had lapsed before he showed up at the hotel in Mesquite?
Oh, several hours, I guess.
Okay, so Gary shows up.
In the meantime, I didn't ask him, and I never asked. I didn't want to know.
Yeah, so he shows up with the revolver a couple hours later. I guess what he did, the only person that knew you were there was Chuck, right?
Well, Chuck knew I was there, and David Phillips
David
knew I was
Phillips.
There.
Yeah,
And
so
Johnny Roselle.
Oh, okay. So he must have called one of them and said, "Hey, what do you want me to do?" And he goes, "Well, go. Maybe go give the weapon."
He would
to
have
Jimmy.
called Phillips. He would have called Phillips. He wouldn't have called Chuck or Johnny.
Okay.
He would have called Phillips.
But so he knew. We know that it was one of the three people, right? So, and you think it was David, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So he shows up and he goes, "Hey, will you take the weapon?" Well, he would have still had. If he hadn't reloaded it, the fired brass would still be in the gun, right? I mean, he didn't eject the brass at the scene. And what tells me that the Dallas police was involved in this, I mean, we know a lot of things about the Dallas police being involved, knowing that Kennedy was going to be killed and was complicit with this. I mean, the route change was done by Earl Cabell. Earl Cabell was the brother of General Cabell that was fired by Kennedy. I mean, all this fit together. The Dallas police knew that Kennedy was going to be killed. The Secret Service knew that Kennedy was going to be killed. We've talked about this before, but the driver the day of the assassination was supposed to be a Secret Service special agent named Thomas Shipman. Shipman apparently was briefed in on Operation Zipper, the CIA's plan to kill Kennedy, and I guess at the last minute, in sometime mid-October, he backed out and said, hey, I'm not going to be part of this. I mean, I'm not going to drive the car. Because he probably also was thinking, hey, knowing that how people shoot, there you go. That's the Blood Money interview. That was in Dallas at the Hilton Hotel. And but the situation with with JD Tibbet. Where was I? But JD Tibbet, you know, the fact that there was, you know, 38 Super brass at the scene, and we know, you know, James knows the person personally and knows that he was carrying and used a revolver. We know for an absolute fact that it wasn't a 38 Super semi-automatic pistol. So anybody that believes that, they're just believing the police story, okay? Or they're part of the cover-up. Because it wasn't a 38 Super. And there's a way, I'm not going to mention it on this, but there's a way, if you had the ballistics, the rifling and the twist rate and the differences between, you know, a 38 Super and, you know, every gun is a little different. Like some of the sniper rifles I own have very, very fast twist barrels. I have a sniper rifle that has a 1 in 3 twist barrel. If you've probably never heard of that. It's an 8.6 blackout. And there's only one company in the United States that makes stainless steel 8.6 millimeter 1 in twist right now, as far as I know. And you can only get them through Chattahoochee Munitions down in Chattanooga, Tennessee. And the 8.6 blackout, if you don't know what it is, it's a 6.5 Creedmoor necked up to 338. It shoots a 300 grain bullet subsonic, and you can knock a man off his feet at about 500 yards with one. But it shoots a 1 in 3 twist barrel. And the bullet is spinning so fast in a 1 in 3 twist, it's like a blender at close range when it goes through their body. All right. And, but I've got 7 twist, 6.5 Creedmoors. I've got a 7 twist, 6.5 Remington Magnum. I've got 308s that a lot of people, the Marine Corps for years shot 12 twist barrels in 308. I have 8 twist 308s. And I actually have one being made that's a 7 twist. But you can shoot at a higher elevation. One of my CIA buddies, Basil Boz, we've talked about him before. He's got one of my sniper rifles. He's got a faster twist barrel. He lives, I'm not going to say where, but he lives at an elevation in the Rockies of upwards of 9,000 feet. And that 308 at that high altitude on a warm day is supersonic and stable to 1,800 yards. In my 8 twist 308s up here at Bang Steel, if you want to go to a really good shooting school, Dan Newberry runs bangsteel.com. Look that website up. And an 8 twist 308 up there at 2,800 feet is stable to a mile, where a Marine Corps gun, the max effective range is about 900 yards, 1,000 yards right in there. Much past that, the bullets go through the target sideways. But at 2,800 feet with a 200 grain Berger, that F-class match bullet is supersonic to almost to a mile. And that's exceptional in a 308. But all you got to do is run a faster twist barrel and the right bullet with the ballistic coefficient high enough, and you can kill a man at 1,600 yards, But James has put them out there, the M21 shot, I guess, what was that, about 1,400 yards, Jim?
1,400 yards, yeah.
That was in North Vietnam. So, but
I wish I went into their backyard to play the game.
Yeah, that was when it was an XM21. It was the semi-automatic M14 with like a leatherwood scope.
Modified M14. The X21 was a modified M14. Is what it was. And then they dropped the X number after they went ahead and started filling it. Yeah. Using it regular.
Yeah, the XP100, when it was made, XP means experimental pistol. In fact, I got something I could show and tell here. I totally forgot about. Let's see where I can find it. I'll look at it.
If you wanted something to look up, check out the blood bank, Alice Springs, Australia, owned and operated by the CIA. Blood bank, Alice Springs, Australia. I think you'll find that pretty interesting.
It's the blood bank, Alice Springs.
Yeah, Nugan Bank.
While you're looking that up,
that's Australia.
Yeah, Alice Springs.
Yep.
They had to have a bank to wash and launder all the
Yeah.
money from the drugs in Vietnam.
Yep.
If you can see this while you're looking that up, just show the audience. This is a case for a Remington XP100, like James used to kill Kennedy. If you can see, this one's autographed and dated 11/22/63. Remington, when they made the prototypes, and this is, if there ever has been a reveal, this is going to be it right here. James described the pistol that he had. It had a wooden stock with finger grips, and it was 221 Fireball. And Remington went through a couple iterations before they made this weapon. And if you look at it really closely, you'll see that this appears to be a Remington XP100, but it is not. It is the first prototype. And the action, for those guys that really know guns, is a Remington 722. And it is marked. It is not a Zytel XP100 stock. This is the first prototype, wooden stock, finger gripped, for the XP100. It does not have a vent rib. It has an aluminum solid rib. It has a 12-inch barrel. And I don't know if I can get it close enough to the camera, but if you look really closely, it says Remington 722 XP. And then with a little bitty piece of tape right here, it says 222. But this one is the first Remington XP 100 prototype. It's a Remington 722 rifle action. It's a wood stock with finger grips, and it is chambered in 222 Remington. If you can look at it really, really closely, this is something James claimed for years, if I can get it in front of the camera. Right in front of the action and the recoil lug, you can see how thin the barrel is. Even on a XP100 in 221 Fireball, the barrel is much thicker right there at the recoil lug. But anyway, that is the very first prototype for the Remington XP100. It's a Remington 722 action, wood finger groove stock. And I fired it recently. I've sent some pictures to Jimmy that I isolated. I think I sent a copy to you too, but there's a isolation of the Fireball in front of the barrel in the videotape, and it's pretty big coming out of the end of the barrel. And that's a 12-inch barrel. The 221 Fireball actually has a 10 3/4-inch barrel, but that's the only one. And there's another one after that one that's actually in the 221 Fireball, and it's got the wooden stock that matches the Zytel stock. It doesn't have the finger grooves and stuff, but that's the original. And then I also have number one, Remington XP100 number one, and it's in 221 Fireball. And there's one other thing I wanted to point out, Jimmy, and you can comment about this, about what happened and the names of the folks, but the actual gun that was used to kill John F. Kennedy was hiding under the bed of some of his relatives, and a kid came in the house and stole it, used it to shoot at some birds in the neighborhood. The cops were called, and the pistol was seized. The ammunition that was seized when that pistol was seized was 221 Fireball. It's actually called 221 Remington Fireball, okay? And it was not a 222. So just to clarify, there's been a lot of stories out there. I think originally in his confession back in the 90s, he mentioned that some of the first ones that he had when he first got issued, they were a 222, and they had a problem with the barrel. And I could see that. This is a very, very tight contour right after the recoil lug, but I shot it and mine works fine. And it is the original one. It came out of the Remington Museum when they went bankrupt. I know the source of the gun shop that bought all that stuff. And when they started sorting through it, I found out about it and bought this from them. So anyway, that's a pretty close copy of what was actually used. And the one that was, if you want to expand on that, Jimmy, a little bit about what happened with the original one that you used to kill John F. Kennedy. I know the audience would want.
I think evidence it was turned into the evidence locker, but it was never registered, marked in, and the gun disappeared. And the cop that had it probably stole it before he retired. And all the FBI, when they went there, they had about 50 FBI agents stormed Round Lake Beach, Round Lake Park, and all those areas there, the surrounding towns, looking for the weapon, and they couldn't find it. And the gun has disappeared. And evidently it's in one of the lakes up there in Lake County, or the cop is still hanging on to it, and he won't stand there because he could go to jail for stealing out of the evidence room, and also he'd lose his pension.
Yeah,
But there's a police report. As a matter of fact, you've got a copy of the police report, I believe, Jim, that
I do. I have a copy of it, and it shows that it was the ammo was 221 Remington Fireball, not 222.
you might want to send Mike a copy of it.
Yeah. The other thing that's kind of incredible about that story, that this causes a little bit of confusion. Apparently, the early confession in the 90s was that James had fired a 222 and then bit down on the case and left it on the fence. And then I guess years later, when somebody heard that, they went to the fence in Dealey Plaza and claimed that they found a piece of 222 brass that had dentation, tooth marks, compression marks on it. And it was tested that it was, dental marks. And apparently Mr. William Dankbar, I guess, paid a lot of money for that little brass case. And I personally believe that it was, that the person had some kind of desire to make money, whatever you want to call that, that he, oh my gosh, he found a 222 brass and all that. But, I would probably believe it if it was a 221 Fireball case, but it was, so there was some confusion about which caliber cartridge, that the pistol that he actually used to kill Kennedy was in. But he's saying now that it was a 221 Remington Fireball, and that it was a confusion back then that it was 222. So that case that has got marks in it was probably a marketing operation to try to create.
It's starting to fade a little bit, Jim. So
Yeah.
let me jump in a little bit. So the blood bank, when I looked it up, it looks like it's referring to Pine Gap.
Mike and Frank Nugan is the two guys.
Yeah, that's what it's called now, Pine Gap. It's a CIA facility. It's really what it is the big mission there. If you look at it on Google Earth, it's a big listening facility.
Right.
They've got a lot of, but it's mostly.
There's a little funny story I want to say on there. Just only take a second. When I was waiting to go to trial on this, on the cop shooting, the one, it was either, I don't remember if it was Michael Hand's widow or Frank Nugan's widow. I think it was Michael Hand's widow. She had called trying to sneak she had a vase stuffed full of brand new $100 bills with the Nugan Hand Bank signature still on it. And this was in 92 or 93. She got 92, I guess it was. She was arrested for trying to smuggle the vase into the United States, stuffed with $100 bills, and they had the Nugan Hand Bank around it. I thought, how could she be so stupid to try and do that? I read that in the newspaper. I left my butt off.
Are you getting any questions from the audience, Michael, that they'd want Jimmy to answer?
Yeah, sure. There was one about the driver of the limo. Some people, and I've heard this from a lot of people, and I've seen it looks like he comes underhanded and shoots him with. People have said it was an air gun. Do either of you guys know anything about that?
Well, for him to reach over from where he was driving over his seat to get to Kennedy to shoot him in the right temple or even in the back, you'd have to have an awful long arm.
Yeah.
Yeah, the wound was in his right temple from the side, from the right side of the road through his head like this. like that. It wasn't a shot like this. That if William Greer had a gun, now back up to the story I told about Thomas Shipman. Shipman was slated to be the driver, and he backed out. He said, I'm not gonna do it. And if you look on Wikipedia, what the official story is that miraculously, just short of the Kennedy assassination, Thomas Shipman died of a massive heart attack. They found him on a couch dead at Camp David. So
Camp David, yeah.
I think what happened was the Secret Service would have been briefed in on the Kennedy assassination at Camp David. They probably were all flown up there. Okay, hey, this is a top secret briefing. Everybody's been handpicked to do this. This is what we're going to do. We're going to kill Kennedy. And Shipman basically, I don't know if he said okay, and then a couple days later said, no, I'm not doing this. But what they did is they isolated him. You know what I mean? They do that like for special forces mission. You go into isolation before the thing. So you can't go home and say, hey, you're not going to believe this. You know, you tell your wife, hey, don't tell anybody, but we're going to kill John F. Kennedy, that kind of thing. Special forces and I mean, you know, probably, I don't know if they did that with you guys, but when you did a really, really important mission, you went into some kind of isolation a couple of days before you launched, right? So, you know, they don't want anybody to have the opportunity. It's a counterintelligence thing too.
To leak it, yeah.
Yeah, you can't leak what's going to happen, right? And it protects everybody. So they went into isolation. They briefed the mission, and Shipman goes like, no way I'm going to do this. I'm not going to help, you know, be part of killing the president of the United States. So they decide to whack him, right? So they give him whatever they did, some shot or something, and gave him a heart attack. And they go, oh, you know, he had a heart attack on the couch and he's found dead up here, you know. So William Greer is put in. They read him in. He was a long-term Secret Service employee, but he was an employee of the uniform division. He was not a special agent. He was a chauffeur assigned to the White House staff, and he'd been there like 25 years. And he actually drove around both Eisenhower and what's his name, Truman. And he'd driven Kennedy around town a couple times. And so they trusted him, and they went to him and said, hey, look, you know, you want to make a lot of money? And they're like, you know, yeah, I would. What do you want me to do? And he goes, we're going to have you drive the thing. We're going to whack Kennedy. He didn't like Kennedy. So, but he would not have been a weapons carrying Secret Service agent. And also, if he was right-handed, which about 90% of the population of the country is, he wouldn't have turned around and fired left-handed over his shoulder. And also, John Connally and his wife Nellie were right there. Wouldn't they have said, hey, the driver turned around and shot Kennedy? Well, remember, Connally got shot too. There's no loyalty between them and the Secret Service to say, hey, you know, sorry you got hit, but, you know, and that's worth mentioning too. The reason Connally got hit was they were trying to kill the guy that was sitting in that seat, but the snipers that were shooting at Connally thought it was Ralph Yarborough. And Lyndon Johnson wanted Ralph Yarborough dead too. And there was a big argument at the airport, and Kennedy was insistent that John Connally and his wife Nellie were in front of them because two reasons. One, it was protocol because he was the elected governor of Texas. And Nellie was friends. She wanted to be seen with Jackie because Jackie was this, you know, rock star back then. And all the women looked up to her. Well, they wanted Ralph Yarborough dead. He was a liberal Kennedy Democrat, and he was going to run for governor in Texas against John Connally. Well, in case there was an errant shot, because they were going to be shooting at Kennedy, and they didn't want, you know, Connally to get shot accidentally, they wanted to stick Ralph Yarborough in there. And I believe that whoever was the person sticking the gun out the window in the school book depository, which we believe it was the only fingerprint found up there that was, you know, of anybody they knew, was Mac Wallace. And I guess it's remotely possible as Roscoe White. He claimed to his son that he was one of the shooters later. But I believe it was probably Mac Wallace, and then maybe even Roscoe White fired from the other end, because supposedly there were some shots. If you see the picture of the building, the window was open on the 6th floor at the end where they said that Oswald was, but also at the other end of the building, there was a window open. So it's possible that Mac Wallace was on the one end and Roscoe White was on the other, and they were shooting at Conley thinking that it was Ralph Yarborough, but they wanted,
Right.
Johnson wanted both of them dead.
LBJ wanted, Johnson killed.
Right. LBJ wanted.
He was in on it too, yeah.
Yeah, he was in on it right from the start, but he didn't plan it. The CIA planned the whole thing, Operation Zipper, and then they had one of their mercenaries, Jimmy, with the Chicago mob. And if you go back and you watch the YouTube videos by Dangerous Dan Marvin, he said when he went through the assassination school at the JFK, that's ironic, it's called the JFK Warfare Center. I don't know if you've ever been through any of the courses there, but it's where the Special Forces training is. They used to have, it's called something different now, but they used to have the assassination school. And it was trained in, it trained how to do assassinations and, like hits like this. And part of the assassination school, I don't know, do you ever hear the story about the dogs?
I've heard a lot of stories about dogs. What in particular?
Okay, so when you went through the assassination school, there was the combat medic course that they had during Iraq and Afghanistan, where you had to, like shoot a goat or a sheep, and you had to do surgery.
Yeah, I had to do that. Yeah.
Okay, so a lot of people don't talk about that. I don't know. Did they tell you, was that classified back when you did it?
Yeah.
Okay, so surprise, it's not classified anymore. So
we use German methods.
Yeah. So
just using lieutenants in the army.
Yeah, they would have dogs, and they would have to, like train this dog. And then somewhere through the training, they would say, hey, guess what today's combat medic training, you got to shoot your dog and then give it first aid. Wow. And we thought that was one of the psychological tests, that once you became buddies with this dog, if they gave you the orders to shoot the dog, the only guys they would keep past that day were the guys that actually would do it. You know what I mean? Because, I hate to, I like to think that I'm, there's some kind of James Bond guy in the back of my head, but I'm not. I mean, if somebody told me, okay, to prove your loyalty to the situation, shoot the dog, and that's in the movie. What is that movie? The Kingsman or something like that.
Right.
They said you got to shoot the dog. And, but that's what they would do. They would tell them, hey, you got to shoot this dog. And then we want you to give it first aid and save its life. The first aid training that we've given you. And the guys that wouldn't shoot their own dog, they didn't go on through the training any further. But the guys go, okay, you want me to shoot the dog? Bang. And they knew that that's kind of the psychopath they're looking for, and, if you think about it, if you're training somebody to do a mission like that and you're training them to be a killer, you're not training them to kill only the people that they feel like, like you don't want to go through some kind of political or spiritual evaluation every time you give them a mission. You want to be able to say, it's like Mission Impossible, right? You play the tape. It says your mission is kill this guy. The tape will, self-destruct in 5 seconds. See you later. And the guy's going to go to take care of business, but that's what they used to do. And, but that was the school Dan Marvin was going through when they pulled him out under the trees and asked him if he would kill Bruce Pitzer. You know this story?
Yes.
Okay. So Bruce Pitzer was a Navy commander who was getting ready to retire, and he had saved the real JFK autopsy photographs. This might be one of the biggest reveals. The people that don't know this is going to be a big reveal on this show. But Dan Marvin was told, they asked him, they said, we've got a traitor that we want you to kill. Will you do it? And he said, yeah, I'll do it. And he goes, who is it? And they tell him Bruce Pitzer. And he goes, okay, who's that? And he goes, well, he's a Navy, like lieutenant commander. He works at the Bethesda Naval Hospital. And he's fixing to release top secret information to the enemies of this country. And we need him dead. What the true story is he had saved autopsy photographs from the JFK autopsy, and he was going to sell them to the news media for enough money to buy a new house when he retired. And the CIA wanted him dead. Well, Dan Marvin, who was a friend, I guess, of Jimmy, he can tell the rest of the story in just a second. He goes, "Look, I'll kill anybody you want me to. I thought you were saying," I knew he was going back to Vietnam. He said, "I thought you wanted me to kill somebody in Vietnam. I'm not going to kill another American. I'm not going to do it." So they said, "Okay, go back inside." So he goes from under the tree. The CIA guy goes back inside. One of his other classmates comes out. And I forget the guy's name, but I could look into it and tell you what it is. But they ask the guy, they go, "Hey, here's the story. You want to kill a guy for us?" And they're going through the assassination school. And the guy goes, "Yeah, I'll do it. What is it?" And he goes, "It's Lieutenant Commander Bruce Pitzer. He's a Navy commander. He works at the Naval Bethesda Hospital, and he's going to give top secret information to the enemy. We want him dead." He goes, "Okay, I'll do it." And the guy disappeared. And not long after that, Dan Marvin reads in the newspaper that some Navy commander named Bruce Pitzer at the Bethesda Naval Hospital, I think they said he committed suicide. And it was written off like that. And this guy, this Army captain, Special Forces guy, had killed him. Well, Dan Marvin looked for him for a period of time, and he couldn't find him. He like disappeared off the map. But he found him later on, and I know the story. What the deal was is they gave the guy, he got out of the Army, and they sent him to medical school, and they helped him get through medical school, all expenses paid, and he became a doctor. And just they gave him a cash payment, and he just like dropped off the end of the earth and became a doctor. So that's what really happened. But I don't know. James knows a lot about Dan Marvin. You want to make comments about Dangerous Dan?
Dangerous Dan, he was a man of honor, and he wouldn't do anything to soil his uniform like that or to give a bad name to his service. And he would do any job you wanted to as long as it was be legal and not be like one of our people. He would go out and get somebody else if you wanted him to. And he wrote a book, Expendable Elite. And my wife Pamela knew him personally. I never met Dan Marvin face to face, but we corresponded through a few letters while I was in prison and everything, because he had never heard of Operation Mobile White Star, and he had to do a lot of digging to get to it. And I actually met Dan Marvin through my wife Pamela. And Dan Marvin was a good man. He was a man of honor. And like I say, discredit his uniform, no, that was out of the question. He was a man of honor.
It's good to know. So another question for you. Looks like Jim kind of froze there. A lot of people say that Jackie Kennedy may be involved in it too. Why did she jump out onto the back of the car? Was she just crazed or something to get JFK's
She was
brains?
trying to get a piece of skull with the brain to put back in his head. She figured they didn't need it to save him. It's the only reason she crawled out there. And it's one of the Secret Service agents pushed her back into the back seat. And I seen that as I was walking away, walking around the corner of the fence. And cops, they ran by me on both sides. They didn't bother me because I was walking and carrying a briefcase, and I looked like a businessman the way I was dressed, going out for lunch. And so they was in a hurry to catch somebody running through the railroad yards or whatever. So they went over there looking.
Interesting. Wow. So that's amazing. You caught her at one of your eye as you were walking away. How about that? Yeah.
Pardon me, yeah. If I'd have been running, they'd have been chasing me, but I was walking natural, and I stopped, and they ran on both sides of me, and that was it. Yeah.
That's a cool operator. Good job. So now another thing is we have we talked about in the past with who do we have on? It was like another interview we did together where we talked about how Marilyn Monroe, and you drove the guys that were, I guess, on the Marilyn Monroe hit or whatever.
Yeah.
Now, Marilyn Monroe was obviously involved with JFK and RFK, and she was going to talk, they felt. So they needed to.
she wanted JFK to leave Jackie and marry her, and she had dreams of being the first lady. And she was having her kid with his boy girl, I don't know, but she's having the kid with JFK, and she was pregnant, and she had been told to forget about it, to keep quiet and everything, and she was dead beat on holding a press conference and telling the whole story, and so they had 48 hours to get rid of her.
Wow.
I drove the people to Milwaukee Airport, and they flew out there and took care of business.
So she was involved with the CIA as well. She was probably on that MK mind control sex kitten program, whatever, and they were using her to, as we have dirt on you. Is that what you think?
Could have been. But
Yeah,
I
it could have
think
been.
that one of the stories I heard, she went to them and asked them if she could be a member. That she wanted
Wow.
to join them. She wanted to work for the agency. But true or false, I don't know. I never
Yeah.
met Jackie or
Sure.
anything else.
That's it's amazing. So the CIA is just involved in a lot of this stuff.
Oh yeah.
Jeffrey Epstein and all the stuff that he did as well. I mean, we're talking like in your era, that was the beginning stages. They're so much more advanced now. I mean, the stuff that you've been revealing has been because, like me, I can look at something, I go, well, that's that, and that's that, and I've seen you do that. Like with Cuba, you're like, yeah, Cuba, they just use that as a drug running operation.
Yeah.
They had complete control of Cuba. That's amazing. Because I saw that, when I was in Afghanistan, in the opium triangle up there, where they were bringing in the drugs, and you said, yeah, they're just funneling them just like in Vietnam. They're funneling them right through Cuba. Now, when they leave Cuba, do they go up like the Mississippi River? They stay in the.
No, they left Cuba. They would go to the Yucatan, and they would travel through the Yucatan west until they got into where they could make the right-hand turn to go north into the United States. And the heroin got the name Mexican mud at that time.
Incredible. So obviously the CIA is involved in drug running. I saw that when I was in Afghanistan, and they make a lot of money off that. It's a huge money maker.
Where's they have without going to Congress for the money?
Yeah, they don't care about the American public. They just need the money for their black ops.
And when they found out that the CIA had the largest air force in the world, they ordered them to sell it off. So they sold it off, and they sold off Air America, and it became CAT, Southern Air Transport, and all of the different names in there. And they've been involved in so many different things. It's pathetic. But they made this country safe. At that time, I believed in the CIA, and I would never go against the agency at that time because I thought, I really believed in them.
Yeah.
And
I did too.
Today, I'd be ashamed to even know them. Because right now they're covering up a lot of things. They went too liberal as far as I'm concerned. I'll put it that way.
Mm-hmm. I was really surprised when I worked for the CIA. There were a lot of liberal people in there, but the people that I worked with were pretty much like us, very conservative, loved the country. But there was that infiltration starting to happen, and it seemed to be pulling the CIA down into a darkness. So
you worked in the Middle East, right? You worked in the Middle East?
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Well, then you know about the Golden Crescent. That's where the drugs come from, out of there, the Golden Crescent.
Oh, yeah. Yep.
And remember when they had, I think it was Cabal, they had surrounded and they fought for, I don't know, so many people died, and it took them forever to get the city. And my idea was shut down the trail that brings the supplies into there from Frankenstein. And you go right in there. You shut that up, you get the city even without costing any lives. You starve them out. But they didn't do that. It's just like in Vietnam. Some goofy captain kept ordering his man up a muddy hill. and everybody got slaughtered. All you had to do is wait a couple of days and the sun come out and dry the hill off, and then you take it. No problem. They put a lot of people in charge of operations that ran it kind of stupid like. There's always a better way to do things, I found out. I don't care what it is. There's ways to do things without costing so many lives.
That's amazing, Jimmy.
Yes, and they order you into the field, and there are orders out there that are stupid.
Yep. So I've noticed. I mean, all three of us have noticed the same thing. The way the government runs, it's like it's just a meat market for killing people because they make money off that. We can look at stuff and go, "Why are you doing that? We could do this so easy. We can win this war within weeks or months." But they stretch on for 10 years, like in 20 years in Afghanistan. So it's insane. There's no reason for it.
It's a money machine.
Money.
Yeah. Well, the military-industrial complex is the one that makes the money.
Yep.
And they sell weapons to both sides.
Absolutely. And they twist all of us into doing their dirty work.
Yep.
And it's once you realize that, you're disgusted. There's so many people that commit suicide these days in the military, and I predicted the most of those people were committing suicide because they found out that they were used. And then I talked to a guy that's very heavily involved with PTSD, military PTSD, and he said, "You're absolutely right. Most of the people that are committing suicide are the ones that are disgusted and feel like betrayed and so forth, so they commit suicide because they were used."
Yeah, I agree.
Well, I'm not going to make it easy for them by committing suicide. They either got to kill me or wait for my natural death.
Yeah, you've proven that. Yeah.
In the last couple of weeks, I decided to give my body to science. Let them cut it up and do whatever they want to with it.
Yeah.
I'd like
Yeah,
to
it
make
must have
enough
been,
money that I can bury you.
My wife was to make enough money to bury me.
I must have gotten on a sensitive
Pack
subject
me up a piece.
Yeah.
with
You're out.
Dangerous Dan because they kicked me offline. You know?
Yep.
But
that's one of the things we put up with here, revealing information.
Yeah.
We'll lose a whole show, or we'll lose certain people, or get it like there was time where it was hard to hear you, so they'll come in and they'll infiltrate and they'll like.
You might know what I'm fixing to say. I believe the government and the CIA was the ones that killed Dan Marvin. They used the beam to get the heart attack because Dan Marvin sued the CIA to get his book out. And he won in court, and he got his book out, Expendable Elite. And I liked Dan Marvin's book, but the only thing I had against it was Dan Marvin gave himself too much credit instead of giving his team all the credit. And I don't care if you are the team leader. You are nobody unless you've got your team, and your team makes you what you are.
It's a good book. I've got a copy, and I've read it a couple times. And he was ordered. It was in a mountain, like it would call it a fob now, but back then there was another name for it. It was like an outpost or something, OP something. And there you go. That's it. And
I read it too.
Yeah, it was ordered to bring his team out. So you know the story, and he basically said, "No, we need to make a deal before, because I'm not going to let you ambush my team." When you and he was trying to save some of the people that, I guess, what was he working with, the Montagnards mostly?
Yeah.
And those are very courageous people. They got a big community in Minnesota. I've always wanted to meet them. I think their general, I think he just recently died. I think his name was Vang Pao. And he was a very courageous
the one
guy.
that Dan Marvin helped us sneak into the country.
Yeah. He helped them. But the Montagnard people are very proud, very courageous people, good fighters. And but we shouldn't be. Our country shouldn't be using those people like that. Like feeding them some big line of crap.
They did not like the South Vietnamese government, or they didn't like the South Vietnamese people, I should say, and they didn't care whether they're South Vietnamese or North Vietnamese. But they had a strong habit of cutting their livers out when they kill them and eating their livers.
Yeah. Whew. Who was that? The Montagnards?
Yeah.
Mm.
When
Well,
you
that's
go
like
up in the
what's his,
mountains there on the Emery's Range where they were at in the Emery's Mountains.
yeah.
I had a couple of Arvin Rangers with me, it being in my shirt tail. So I know if they got ripped off, I could save them.
It's like the nickname of the guy was Liver Eater Johnston. It was John Johnston, and you'll probably remember him best. There was a book, if you haven't read it, it's pretty good. It's called Crow Killer, and it's not crow birds, it's crow Indians. And the guy was named John Johnston, but he's the inspiration behind John Millis's movie Jeremiah Johnson with Robert Redford. He was a mountain man and all that, and he would, but his nickname was Liver Eater Johnston, and he would kill the Crow Indians and eat their livers. That was, I don't know what there is about that, but I guess it's but he was killing, he was really renowned for killing grizzly bears and all that kind of stuff. But his great grandson, who's now dead, lived in Okemos, Michigan. His name was Ken Johnston, and Ken is the inventor of the ignition system that's used in the Remington Ultimate muzzleloader rifle. It's a plug that's inside a bolt action rifle, so it's enclosed. It's not exposed, like the nipple and the percussion cap is not exposed. It's inside the action of a Remington 700. He invented that thing, and I wrote an article for Precision Shooting Magazine back in 2011, the October issue, that was on the cover, and he was paid a lot of money for the ignition system for that rifle, and Remington makes that muzzleloader to this day. But he was the sixth generation removed grandson of Liver Eater Johnston, and that's the movie Jeremiah Johnson. That's where it came from. But his grandson Nick is still building those custom muzzle-loading rifles to this day. But look up ultimatefirearms.com. But anyway, hey Jim, what else about the book? What other key points about your book, Primary Target JFK, would interest the audience? Obviously, if they want to know really the inside dirt on the JFK assassination, the documents.
I think the entire book would interest them.
Yeah,
question and answers.
And a lot of the questions that the people have on their minds, those questions are in the book probably. And we got one section that's dedicated to Q&A for question and answers. Where, like we told the people, Pamela told them, and she put it on the internet. She said, if you want to ask a question, ask it. And if you want your name attached, let us know. And we'd be more than happy to include your name in the book. And so we got a lot of people that responded, and they wanted to ask questions, and they wanted their name in the book. And some of those questions, even though they're double questions, just ask over, but each person that had the question, we gave them the benefit of that. We put it in the book. So we didn't want to close anybody out. We used everybody that wanted to know. And so even the questions are interesting that people ask.
If you're telling the truth,
Yeah.
how come you're still alive? What happened to the gun? What were some of the other details that you didn't go over in the main story, and just all the questions.
What I know that you've been in. We have up till a few weeks ago. We talked every day, but and you've been in poor health, and you're kind of. I know you're struggling through this. You've been in bed most of the time, but what? How many? For the audience, there's only a few copies of the autographed thumb-printed books left. I guess how many do you think you have? So that if they don't order one tonight and something should happen to you, there won't be any more available.
I've probably got
About
150.
About 25 of the soft cover, and we've got about 60 of the hardcover.
Okay, Mark just answered it.
Okay. So when they're gone, they're gone. So if you're listening to the show, I highly recommend you go to JFK Murder James Files .weebly, and it's spelled WEEBLY 2 E's.com. JFK Murder James Files .weebly.com, and get a copy of this book, Primary Target JFK, that's got James's autograph and his thumbprint in it, and Pam's autograph, the author. And there's a limited number of these left. We've said that before, but James has struggled through another month, and Pam orders more books and gets him to. I've got a photograph of him signing these books up around him in his bedroom, where he sits up and struggles through signing them and putting his thumbprint in there. But if you want one, this is perhaps it's possible it's the last opportunity. So I would highly recommend you go to their website. And also, if you, I know it sounds unusual to say, help folks out, but if you've got a heart for somebody that was a patriot and served this country as a black ops mercenary, they can always use your help. There's a little tab on their website at that what I just said, JFK Murder, jamesfiles.weebly.com, to support and donate. That's the picture. I can't remember. Pam, did you take that picture, or did I take that picture in Dallas?
I took that one.
Yeah, but he shot Kennedy from the picket fence right up behind him. There's a historic marker right there. And if you want a copy of this book, yeah, that's on the grassy knoll. That's the picket fence. Now, that's a new one. When Jim was there, the fence was on the other side of the trees, closer to the road. The shot was 29.3 yards. It was about 88 feet. A close shot. He had a 3-power scope on the Remington XP 100. But today, with the fence the way it is now, it's about 100 feet from where about he was standing to the X on the pavement where Kennedy was killed. But he was serving this country as a black ops mercenary. He was told the story that Kennedy was, had committed high treason and was, basically working with the Russians for bad things. And he didn't support the Bay of Pigs invasion. And there was a lot of reasons that a lot of military people didn't like Kennedy back then. And he was given the mission really that morning. He didn't even know ahead of time that he was just kind of a backup shooter. And as fate would have it, they hadn't hit him in the head when he got down to Jimmy, and Jimmy took the shot. And he doesn't miss. I mean, I know some of the stories, and you know what I mean? And he's not, if people are thinking he's trying to get rich doing this, they struggle to pay their bills.
Yeah.
And, this should be the #1 best-selling book on the New York Times list. You know what I mean? But it's suppressed by the government. The CIA denies everything from the zipper document, which was released by one of their employees, Robert Crowley. And, when you got a picture of yourself with the Operation 40 group in '63 and a picture of yourself with Felix Rodriguez in Bolivia, capturing and executing Che Guevara, if anybody wouldn't believe that this man was a CIA black ops assassin, you're just, it's just too much evidence that, and the whole thing about the mercury bullet, him and Wolfman, and then eventually David Phillips a few days later is briefed on that. That's why Kennedy. Jim, you want to talk about that? What happened to Kennedy's body?
With the body.
Well, they've buried his body at sea. They drill holes on a cement vault that they usually put the casket in. They drill holes in it and drop it off so it is sinking. It remain at the bottom because they didn't want any thing, because they found out that the body was had mercury on it. There's mercury inside the skull, all over the outside of him, and that they didn't want to bury him in Arlington. And they claimed he's there, but he's not. And that's what got Joe West killed, was because when Joe West was investigating it and come to see me at Stateville Prison and told me he was trying to get Kennedy's body exhumed, I told him that Kennedy's body wasn't there. And I told him why it wasn't there, because of the mercury. And Joe West tried to enter it back into the judge there in Houston. And the next thing you know, Joe's in the hospital again with a bad heart. And allegedly he was supposed to have died of a heart attack, but he wrote a note. And I've still got a copy of the note that he wrote to his daughter, wife, to get him out of the hospital, that they were trying to kill him. And the nurse, they all think that we're trying to kill him. And 45 minutes later, Joe S. was dead.
Stay on that picture just for a second. Are you done with that, Jim?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay, so I want to make the point that Kennedy's body is in a concrete vault that has these big round holes in it. Now, there's only a handful of people that knew that at the CIA, because there was some Secret Service people too. But if you go to Dallas, about a block from Dealey Plaza, you'll see this item that Michael's pulled up right there. And this is critical. If you look at this, look on the right side, if you can go back to that picture, and you can see those round holes that they are depicted on the box. Now, why would the President John F. Kennedy Memorial Plaza be built in Dallas, about a block from Dealey Plaza? And the representation to memorialize John F. Kennedy was a white concrete box. Why would that be? Because a handful of people knew that his body was in a white concrete box off of that area in Massachusetts where his family compound is. His son was buried at sea also. Some people say he's still alive, but that's the memorial. Now, who in the world would think that a good memorial for John F. Kennedy would be a big white concrete box? Well, it was an inside joke with the CIA people that buried him in a white concrete box with holes in it off the coast so that the critters could get in there and eat his body. And anybody listening to this, including President Donald Trump, if you go to Arlington Cemetery with a backhoe and dig up John F. Kennedy's casket, he is not in it. And if there is a body in it, it's likely to be the body of J.D. Tibbet, who was kind of a lookalike. And all you'd have to do is do a DNA test, and exactly what I just said would be proven. John F. Kennedy is not in his grave in Arlington. He is the remnants of whatever might be left, which would be nothing probably. If you look at the Titanic wreck, the only people in the bottom of the ocean, the only part of those people that went down with the Titanic that's left is their shoes. And he was naked, so there would be nothing left. That box would be empty. And I don't think you could achieve, even if you scraped up the dirt in the bottom of it, you probably couldn't find his DNA in it. But John F. Kennedy is not in his grave. And if you want to prove me wrong, then dig it up and look in it. And I can tell you, you probably could find that white concrete box out there if the CIA hadn't already gone out there and rigged explosives to it and blown it up. So it's little pieces of gravel all over the thing. But now I've said that, they probably are leaving the port right now with a bunch of C4. I don't
remember what year it was, but they was moving the graves or something or other, and they dug up the casket, and they wanted to open it up, and Teddy was sitting on it. He wouldn't let him open it.
Yeah.
Teddy Kennedy.
Yeah, he knew his body wasn't in there.
Yeah.
So everybody in the Kennedy family knows that the CIA killed John and Robert. And they also know that Ted's political future was ruined at Chappaquiddick. And the CIA had something to do with all of those. And that's our country. I'm surprised that they've allowed, I know they tried to kill him at least twice at Butler and down in near Mar-a-Lago at the golf course. But I'm surprised that they haven't done more to keep RFK Jr. out of the government, because RFK Jr. knows the CIA killed his father. He knows that the CIA operative was named Thane Caesar. He knows. And I personally think, and I hope, that these rumors about the military tribunals and these people being arrested and executed, the traitors to our country that have committed treason and been part of this in the deep state, I hope it happens soon. And in the name of Jesus Christ, I hope they hire me to be the executioner, because I'll kill every single one of them with a smile on my face. This country has been subverted by evil people, and they need to die for their treason. That's from Jim Scott's lips.
Excuse me for interrupting, but if you guys will excuse me, I'm going to have to go lay down because I'm in a lot of pain right now. I can't sit here any longer. I'm surprised I lasted this long.
All right, Jimmy. Thanks a lot. We'll go ahead and sign off now.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
You guys can keep talking if you want, but I got to go. I can't sit here any longer.
Nice to see you, brother. Thank you. Thank you, Pam.
Yep. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Great show. Appreciate
Thank
it.
you guys for everything, and I hope your audience enjoyed the show. And I'll talk to you guys later.
Yep.
I gotta go lay down. I can't make any longer.
God bless you, brother.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for your service, both of you.
All right. Love you, man. Take care.
You too. Thank you.
There's we could talk as long as you want. If you got a few minutes, you can see that that's the limit probably of the books that are left piled up in their living room. And but you know, it tickles me sometimes. I almost have to pinch myself. In an hour at 8 o'clock is my Citadel Alumni Bible Study Group that meets every month. And when I was a senior at the Citadel, I never dreamed, you know, that the 60th anniversary of the JFK assassination, I'd be in Dallas with the man who shot Kennedy and be involved in any of this like I am. For the people in the audience that don't know this part of the story, how I kind of got involved with this was I was a Virginia State trooper, and I saw Jimmy's tape, the confession of an assassin, that he was the one that killed John F. Kennedy. In that video, he exposed that Johnny Roselli was the liaison with the CIA and had met with the CIA in Virginia to orchestrate the assassination of John F. Kennedy. Well, then my Citadel brain said, hey, wait a minute. That means that there was a conspiracy to kill the president of the United States in Virginia, which would give me probable cause as a Virginia State trooper to open the JFK case. So I approached, I went above my chain of command because it's not that I didn't trust them, but I wanted to go to somebody that I trusted more and that had a little more power. I went to a first sergeant who I'd worked with before, and he was the first sergeant for my academy class about 4 years earlier in Richmond. His name was Paul Kavosnica, and I approached him. He told me to call one of the dispatchers in 7th Division, who he was close friends with, and ask her to retrieve the criminal history of this man named James Earl Files / Sutton, which is his original name, and get a copy of his criminal history. And he said, let's start there. And I got it. And I gave him the Confession of the Assassin video that you could rent it for a couple dollars at Blockbuster, and you could buy it for like $11. And I bought, I think, 4 copies of it. And I shared them with friends of mine and with the state police. And I said, this guy is telling the truth. I think this is the guy who killed John F. Kennedy. Let's look into it. So apparently he went to a lieutenant at headquarters named George Cholas. And George, I guess, contacted the FBI. And then, like, in a short period of time after that, all I got was the word was forget about it, that it's a closed case. It's a government case. Lee Harvey Oswald, 3 shots from behind, blah, blah, blah. Well, then shortly after that, George Cholas ends up dead in the woods behind his house, and they said he committed suicide. And I asked some people, I said, what in the hell is going on with Lieutenant Cholas? And they said, oh, well, what we heard was the FBI came down and said that he was downloading like kiddie porn on his state police computer in his office. Now, what state trooper, knowing, who had been a BCI agent, was a first sergeant and a lieutenant, what guy would download kiddie porn on his state police computer in his office? That's crazy to think that. And if you knew the guy, I just would never suspect he would be somebody that would be remotely involved in anything like that. So anyway, supposedly they came in, this is total. I mean, I don't know this to be a fact. This is just speculation on my part. My understanding was they came in and they put him on a suspended status or something. And then they claimed he went home and killed himself. And supposedly the story is that they said that he was downloading kiddie porn to his state police computer. What I think happened, and this is speculation too, is that the CIA downloaded a bunch of kiddie porn on his computer and then told the FBI, hey, this lieutenant with the state police is downloading kiddie porn. Go get him. It's kind of like when they told the HRT to go after David, what's his name, in Waco. They went out there and burned the damn place down and, killed all 80 people, including a bunch of children. But so anyway, they apparently they came in there and, I guess, like I said, this is just the rumors I heard that the FBI comes in and says, hey, we think that this lieutenant with the state police is downloading kiddie porn on his computer. So I guess the state police goes, well, we'll have to see what the FBI's got, and we'll put you on a suspended situation and all that. And my guess is he went home and they were probably waiting for him. It's just a guess. And that when he got home, he said, hey, they badge you, hey, we're the FBI. And they're really like CIA black ops assassins. Yep. And they say, hey, we need to talk to you about this situation. Can you come over here and talk to us? And his guard's down because they said, we can work this out, if we just talk with it and everything. And bam, they whack the guy, drag him out in the woods and throw his pistol beside him. Or maybe they disarmed him with his own pistol and then killed him because I heard the rumor I heard was that he was killed with he killed himself with his own state police pistol. I don't believe it for a minute. I think he was murdered. I think it would be if the truth came out about it. And I hope they don't come whack me to cover the story up or something. But, I care about this country. And, it's just like when Dan Marvin was asked to kill Bruce Pitzer, the Navy commander who was going to release the real autopsy photographs of JFK. I've sent you 2 of them. You can pull them up if you want, if you still have them. Most of the American people have never seen the results of when a 221 Fireball Mercury bullet hits you in the side of the head from 29 yards. But, it's tragic, and then what could I do at that point, and just a couple years after that, I get this kind of a BS complaint and elected to resign my position with the state police. I really in lieu of being fired, so I was targeted too. And, but I guess the joke's on them. Wasn't too long after that, I get a 6-figure job in corporate safety. And, I'm like making more than their colonel's making now. So, but I can tell you this whole JFK thing, there were a lot of people that were killed to shut him up. We know that David Ferry was killed to keep him from testifying. He had been called by that in that case with Jim Garrison, the movie JFK, and that book written by Colonel Fletcher Prouty, which his daughter, Lauren, is one of my neighbors. And I know a lot of inside stuff about Fletcher Prouty. And, I really should write a book, but I really can't.
Really.
I can't do it until.
I know you know a lot of inside stuff because you've talked to James for a long time. So if he does actually pass, you probably could.
If President Trump really, really wants to break the news to the American people about what happened in the JFK assassination and all that, he would tonight give James Files a full pardon, release him of his legal responsibilities for his non-disclosure agreements. I can even, I'll hint about one thing. One of the missions included, let's just put it this way. One of the missions included the death of more than one extraterrestrial.
Wow.
True.
Ooh, that you better be careful there.
I know.
That's how I started going there, and that's how I got
I know.
pretty much almost taken out.
Yeah.
So that's a because then they have carte blanche, Majestic 12. You know the deal.
Yeah. Well, so, just for the fun of it.
Asking, this is a question for you. How many grains and what velocity does a fireball shoot?
No, I'd have to look it up, but the factory ammo, hold on one second. I can answer one of those questions immediately. The original factory ammo was a 50 grain bullet, and I want to say it was about 2650, but hold on. I have a box of the original ammo within arm's reach. Okay.
Wow.
Now I'd have to look it up. My guess is it would be about 27 grains. This is a vintage box of 221 Fireball ammo from 1963. And on the end of the box, it says 221 Remington Fireball, 50 grain soft point. Index number is 5221. And it doesn't, I don't think it says the velocity on here, but I want to say out of the 10 3/4 inch barrel of a Remington XP 100, I think it's about 2650, the 50 grain bullet. It's not that fast. It's fast, but now you can hand load like a 40 grain nozzle or ballistic tip or one of the little, what do they call them? Varmint. It's a Varmageddon bullet, I think 40 grains, and you could load one of those. And there's a couple companies, Spear and Sierra makes a 40 grain bullet, I think, for the 22 for the centerfire cartridges. You got to be really careful those with a long barrel. When you push them too fast, like out of a 220 Swift, you can push those 4,300 feet per second, something like that, and they tend to come apart. Now I have a picture, and I can't provide it right this second. I maybe could look it up on my phone. But when a bullet is pushed too fast in these small calibers, like a 220 Swift, a real light bullet pushed above 4,000 feet per second, the bullets tend to fail, but they don't come apart in pieces. What happens is, especially in a long-barreled 220 Swift, the pressure and the friction in the barrel, when you have a long barrel like a 26 or 28 inch barrel, the friction on the thin metal, the copper jacket on the lead core, it actually causes the surface area of the bearing surface of the bullet to melt. So you have molten lead surrounding a solid lead core, and it starts banging around inside the copper jacket. And actually what it'll cause is the bullet comes apart from the core, kind of banging on the, it's an imbalance. And I've got a picture here real quick I can show you of what it looks like when that bullet fails. The molten lead sprays out. And if you see it going down range, it looks like a little puff of gray smoke. But what it is it's liquid lead. And
wow.
Hold on just a second. I just skipped over it a second ago when I tried to click on it. And all right, now I'm gonna show you a picture. I'm gonna expand this on my phone. If I can show you, that is a bullet failing. And now remember the twist rate, and you see that it has spun around more than once. It's gone like, say, 1.5 rotation. If you look, and what happened so let's say the bullet had the barrel had a 10 twist barrel, about 15 inches from the hole in the target, the bullet failed, and the liquid lead sprayed out of the bullet. And as the bullet went through the target, the liquid lead was impacting the target. So that's what you have. That gray semicircle on there is liquid lead that splattered on the paper target. And that's a sniper target. It's a head-sized target. Let's see if I can get the other. That's a little smaller. I can get this to focus on there. But that's liquid lead smacking the target after the bullet failed at too high a velocity. So during ballistic testing, we found that this particular bullet we were testing was failing. So we moved the target back until we actually got the liquid lead smacking the target. And actually, that picture's online. It was a Lee Enfield, I think, maybe 6mm or something. But if any other questions, now I can look it up in a reloading manual. But I'm guessing it's probably, and I don't know the original factory ammo that this is. I don't know what powder they had in there. But it's probably a 222 would be about 27 grains. It might be something like 18 grains of powder, depending on what kind of powder it is. It's not very much. And it would be, I think there's one of the cases in here. that I could show you. It's a little small case. It's and I should have sent you one of those pictures. I've got a picture that's a really good one. It's a 221 fireball next to a 222 next to a 223. And a 222 and a 223 are about the same length, but the 222 has a longer neck. That's a 221 fireball. And I would say that's about, I don't know what the length of the case is. You could look it up in any reloading manual. If you really want to know, look under Nosler, N-O-S-L-E-R, reloading data, and their reloading manual will come up online. And it will tell you how many grains of powder and, all that. But it just uses a small rifle primer. But you could load a lighter bullet much faster. And remember, mercury would be lighter than lead. So you could load it. But they actually tested them, and Wolfman said that the mercury bullets, if you pushed them too fast, they would fail because they're already liquid. You know what I mean? It was a round used. It was designed to be used at close range in that it would not ricochet. Yep. It's going to hit and come all apart. But then also, it's not like if you used the Barnes X bullet, like a 55 grain Barnes X, a TSX, and you shot Kennedy in the head like this, and Jackie's right on the other side, that bullet is the petals are going to open up like a boat propeller. And it's going to go right through Kennedy's head and kill Jackie too.
That's another reason why they do the liquid round. Yeah.
Yeah. And you can
just dumps right in the body right there, and it blows up.
And then after that, it's just a liquid.
Nothing.
You know. And then there's the old.
But that's why we use those rounds when we did room clearance. Clearing a terrorist. Somebody could have a gun at somebody's head, and you could shoot them in the eye, in the ocular cavity, into the brainstem, and it's done. And it's not going to spray and hit anybody else behind them. So that's why if anyone doesn't know why you use a liquid round, of course, yes, it's devastating. It's gonna destroy the target, whatever you shoot. You could shoot a pig in the tail. It would probably just disintegrate the pig all the way through. But it's not gonna damage anything else. It's just in that soft tissue.
Well, the other thing too is just in physics, you can't compress a fluid, right? So that's how you can take a hydraulic jack and a half a cup of hydraulic fluid and lift a house off the ground. You know what I mean? You can't compress a fluid. So if you can put pressure on a fluid, it'll lift up anything, And like when they set off the nuclear tests out there in that atoll in the Pacific, you got, 1,000 feet of water underneath a ship, and you set off a nuke. You can lift an aircraft carrier up in the air when that water goes up in the air. It doesn't, So, but any more questions like that? I mean,
no, and that's kind of, I'm getting to the point where I got to check off because I got another show coming up.
That's fine.
So fantastic. I'm glad you were able to come in. Great questions, great insight on your part as well. You've done obviously incredible research. So it's great to share that. I hope Jimmy lasts longer. We thought he was going to pass many times, but it does seem like he's probably getting towards the end now. So that's unfortunate. But at some point, there are people like you that have done incredible research, and you've talked to him quite a bit. And he doesn't reveal some things, but you could.
So. I'm going to after he dies. And a lot of people have said I need to write a book. But to be honest with you, I could write 10 books about this guy. I mean, if there ever was, and what's really funny is, if you really know him in his heart, I mean, he's a really a patriot. He would have done anything and killed anybody as long as he thought the government like if you'd say, hey, go over and kill this 10-year little boy. He's going to give the Russians a big secret that we don't want them to know. He wouldn't ask not one question. He'd just go over and whack them. I mean, he was a psychopathic machine, a killing machine.
And remember, he was programmed from a boy to be
that's
like
right.
this.
That's what this is all about. It's a mental condition.
Generational problems with this, yeah.
And our friend Gordon Ferry, who's recently written a book about the JFK assassination, it was worked with the Secret Service and Marine Sniper and all that stuff. He worked with Carlos Hathcock. Gordon has said that Jimmy's biggest problem is that he didn't know how to say no.
Yeah.
He would do whatever if the CIA
told him. You know what would happen if he did say no.
Oh yeah.
He'd get like, firing squad from about 50 guys shooting them all at once.
Yeah.
Like some of his compadres did over time.
Yeah.
He's like one of the last few that's left. They just killed all those guys over time.
Yeah. And that's the other thing. I'm fearful for a lot of the GRS guys that they get in situations and they're asked to do certain things. It's like Special Agent Thomas Shipman. If you back out of being the driver in the deal after you've been briefed on the mission, you don't just walk away knowing that the government is going to kill him. They got to whack you too. So, and they will. It's all about the big picture. And you were exactly right about the whole thing about the suicides. That's what I've always thought. I don't think it's as much PTSD as it is the guy looks at himself in the mirror and goes, I went out there and me and my friends sweated and bled, and my buddies, some of my best friends, were killed for nothing. And we were used. And it wasn't to bring a better government to Afghanistan or Iraq or whatever. All this was about is buying and selling guns and weapons and making the military industrial complex folks, keeping that rolling and keeping them, getting a few people uber rich.
Yeah. Now, some people said, even a child. Well, if you're this has happened to people that were on walls and overseas in Afghanistan, where they had little girls strapped with bombs,
right?
Because girls are expendable.
Sure.
The boys are the ones that it's Muslim culture, so they would strap bombs to the little girls and have them go to the gate because they were going to blow the gate with this little girl. So you're on the wall, and this girl has a bomb strapped to her that's going to like blow the gate, and then everybody's going to die. What are you going to do? So people have been faced with this stuff before, guys. And like we talked about, that the FBI, how many people have you heard about over the last 4 years have been raided that didn't deserve to be raided because the FBI was told this person did this and this and this, and it was all a lie.
Right.
So,
yeah, that's it. Yep. And the FBI guys, credit to them, HRT guys or whoever it is, they get sent, hey, this guy's an enemy of the country. Oh, God, we're going on a real world mission to get this terrorist, and it's really somebody that is, going to rat out the deep state or something like that. And, you go and I can tell you, if you knock on my door in the middle of the night and you don't back away from the door and, be polite and all that kind of stuff, that's a quick way to die. I mean, I know if you come up my driveway or anywhere around my house, I get these little beeping sounds that tell me where you are. And the deer set them off all the time, but I don't care. I know when, but if, you come on my front porch and threaten me, I'm not, hey, I'm from the FBI. I don't care. You good. Give me your boss's name and his phone number. And even when I call them, then I'm going to call the sheriff's office and say, hey, I've got an imposter on my front porch that's saying he's FBI. I need you to send a deputy to my location right away. I think the guy's trying to break into my house. And there's going to be some authentication before I just go, oh, okay, come on in the house. I mean, I don't trust it. And it's a shame that it's got to be that way. Yeah. You know what I mean? And,
it's been that way for a long time.
Yeah. You take these good guys.
These assassinations have been going on for decades now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's terrible. And I'm sure
you have to be heads up. I trust but verify.
There you go.
Yeah. All right, brother.
Great show.
I got to jump. So thankful for the show. This was a great show. More incredible shares for people. So hope you guys enjoy it. We'll see you guys next time.
I hope everybody orders the book. And thank you to Tracy Joe, who's back there in the shadows, making everything happen.
Exactly.
All right. Thank you, brother.
Thank you, brother.